Good afternoon, councillors, and welcome to this afternoon's extraordinary meeting to discuss Tararua flood waters done well. Many of us have put a lot of reading time to understand the documentation, but none more than Councillor Chief. Thank you for this really. I'll ask you to give
Your Worship, this is trying to address one. So,
yeah. At that time, can I just have the apology, please, of Councillor Steve Wallace, very seconded by Councillor Wallace, Please Valley. Apologies,
so background, we know that this reform has come from this consecutive governments on the sector. That's considered a very serious issue for the country, and on that basis the government has given us direction in terms of their legislation position on where we should head. The difficulty in terms of the analysis is that we will lose direct control of our water assets if we choose to use an outside organisation of some sort. However, that is highly encouraged in terms of the legislation by the very fact that access to funding for the large capital programs that all the country has to spend on waters means that we are kind of caught by an excellent model of being able to borrow one of the lowest risk rates in the world, because LGFA, who funds our capital programs, is rated as AAA through the Standard & Poor's system. This is a fundamental aspect of why the CCO model is preferred in this report. And second, the challenge for Tararua is that we've got a good asset management plan, which means we've identified all of the things that we must do, and it's expensive. And that's very difficult to do if we don't achieve some sort of efficiency by reducing whatever overheads we can, whatever planning we can do with others. So it's leading us down this path towards creation of the CCO. And then it comes down to, well, who should we partner with? Who is going to be able to logically work with us quickly to get this underway? Because in the long term, we can see that this might move to a even larger model in time. So a number of CCOs might join, for instance, in the future. So you can see where these things might end up in 10 years. So having that perspective and being aware that a whole bunch of new regulation will come into play, both in terms of water standards, that's making them consistent, as well as maintaining the increase in standard. So there are two elements to it. At the same time, regulation over the finance and management of the activities of waters. There's an expectation that they are going to be regulated heavily in the future, and will Tararua be able to stand alone by itself to do that? There's a real problem in terms of capability resourcing to deal with what will be required in the future for us. We're already trying to comply with many changes already. What we're saying is that there's another level again coming. Overnight, the bill, the final bill in the legislative program for 3 years came through. So it's over 300 page, just in case you think we're trying to have a competition on output of pages. There's over 300 pages of legislation that we now have to come to grips with, probably over Christmas, so that's exciting for us. And it's going to see out how the new structure is going to work in practice. So it's got the detail in it. It's taken a long time since the first piece of legislation came to repeal. The next piece that set this process that we're looking at right now in motion. And the final bit is, how will we get our water service delivery plans over the line? How will the regulation actually operate? How will the charging system work when it's in a new CCO, for instance. They use the term organisation in the new legislation in the bill that's just come through. So they're not trying to really corral us into any one type of entity. So this was that clear. The key though comes back to who has access to the local government funding agency funding as a source. And really that's CCOs, council controlled organisations. And that's really the premise behind the report, all of the supporting consultants reports that are in this enormous agenda that I have delivered to you. I'm sorry. Believe me, I'm sorry. So to me, we've got this very serious challenge for the Tararua District. We've got our old infrastructure needing to be replaced, so the huge renewal program. We've still got to deal with the wastewater compliance. Now that might soften with what the government's proposing with RMA reforms and the National Environmental Standard. Yes, one of the two. You know what I mean. The thing is that when this gets consolidated, or if this gets consolidated into a CCO, you end up with a new management team looking at it in a completely different way, looking at it at a larger scale and working out then how the priorities are going to work for that new business. That's concerning to us as local government, because at the moment we've got that when it goes to the new CCO, say, that's going to be far more difficult for us to manage and control. So we are definitely giving up something if we choose the CCO. Problem is, the standalone, or as I've said, enhanced continuation of what we've got will have to comply with all the new rules. And when DIA did the analysis for us in one of these reports, we breached the new standard that was in the middle legislation, which says we have to ring fence our waters away from the rest of council activities. What that means in practice is that the amount of debt that we can borrow can't just be lost in the midst of the entire council. Waters now has to stand alone. It can't breach 500% of our revenue source for waters, 5 times the revenue source. So that means that for 4 years of our current LTP, which we got fully cleared, it was fine, we now breach the new water service law. What happens if you join with others is that the timing of their projects means that there are gaps, and the math that we've looked at already through DIA working ourselves says that we can average it out across the joined entity. That works for both Manawatu 2 on the move and Wairoa. Doesn't mean that we don't get doesn't mean that we save money per se. It just means that we will stay within the debt limits that LGFA have set. So that's really important aspect, and deeply buried in all of these numbers, that's what it says. So that's why if we try to stand alone and we bring in the costs, the enhanced calculations, so we would have to use the LTP numbers for all 3 waters, plus the compliance costs, the new compliance costs will have to come in for the both the Commerce Commission and Te Mata. So both of those costs will come in, as well as all the staffing costs that will have to be there to meet the regulators' requirements. So I'm backing it up here. The enhanced model is difficult to do without recasting our LTP. It's basically what I'm saying. we would have to change the timing of our payments to waters and get around this 500% cap issue that LGFA has with us. So, one last thing. In terms of the finances of our council, the water services costs, the activity costs that get charged to consumers through the rates and connection fees, the meter fees, are too high over the LTP period. We can't just let it slide in terms of it will become unaffordable. I think earlier in the day we heard from a statement that the Minister made to Cabinet saying how this will stretch households to beyond capacity. We have that in our current LTP, that is stretched beyond capacity for households. So there has to be some sort of efficiency. Now we usually look at a 3-year horizons in an LTP as what we try to do because we get to revise it. But that LTP that we're on is very difficult for our households to pay, that will be to follow through on, if that makes sense. And so that puts us in a very difficult position in terms of having a very good asset management plan on one hand, but a very difficult long-term plan to actually get the income source from our households. So we're in a tight spot in that respect. And so the reform, I think we understand that we have to welcome it. In terms of some of the special items in the documents that we've sent through, there's a waterfall graph, which was very difficult to show. The idea of a waterfall graph is that you start off with where you are now, baseline, and then you add costs on, take savings off, and you end up where you think it will lie at the end of, in this instance, 10 years. So we've done some math around that. That's based on current asset management work and what we think we need to spend. It still looks very difficult to do. So the question that all councils have been asking themselves is around, is there going to be some sort of cross-subsidisation between council areas as a result of amalgamation of the waters? The Minister yesterday with a statement around the new bill that's just come out is that it's kind of off the table. That's not going to be something of local government concern. It's going to be something that the new CCOs will have to work through. And I think any CCO management team will be very careful about those decisions, about changing the way the charging mechanisms currently work. But at some point, the apron strings will be cut, and these decisions will be likely made by those businesses in reference to the Commerce Commission setting the fees system. In other words, it's going to probably be ultimately the Commerce Commission who will set when some sort of harmonisation occurs amongst all consumers. Bear in mind, this is not unusual. This is how it works when you use your cell phone. There are areas where there are cell phone towers, for instance, that cost a fortune to have sitting there, and we all pay for it. So this is what harmonisation is. And if you're in the middle of the South Island, in the back blocks, and you've got a cell phone reception and you're happy, bear in mind you probably paid a large subsidy towards that cell phone tower for many years. And it might be the first time that you've ever used it. So this is kind of how it works. Sometimes there's too much transparency, I've noticed. You only have to go back to, I think, the 2000s when the bank started to charge 25 cents every time you used an ATM, or people didn't like it. Too much transparency. Where this is headed in terms of the new bill, if a CCO is created, there is going to be a transfer agreement. So this is where you agree all the elements of things that are going to be transferred, both assets and debt. And sorry, Brian, one of the areas will be stormwater, because council will retain stormwater oversight responsibility. But I've spoken to this on the subject with DIA directly. If you've got an asset that considers a stormwater asset and might be a small part of a loan to it, that can be transferred. There's no question about that. It's the more confusing part is when a curve and channel is providing a stormwater function that can't be transferred. That's part of the road. So that's and there are reserves and where the water goes, and regional council issues as well. So what we decided today is around, do we agree on what we need to consult on next year? And who should we start working on a joint water service delivery plan? There's a big cost to doing a joint water services delivery plan. There's a lot of effort involved. The way that I've cast the resolutions for you to consider today is to make it very practical and honest with our community, state our preferred options, and develop a consultation plan early in the new year for you to consider, likely late February, certainly looking through March, sort of April for the actual consultation period, because we need to sort out our water services delivery plan as soon as possible. And the reason for that is that we need to get it cleared in time for that 3rd September deadline. And with the local government election next year, we need to kind of bring back the timeframes to make sure that all of your decision making is completed by sort of the end of June. So it's not a hard time. It could be a little bit later than that, but it's a significant decision. And you don't really want to creep into that election period decision making time frame. Pre-election decision making time frame. Questions?
Councillor John and Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks for a very well prepared report and document. I did get through to page 463, I think it was, and it was all about tariff normalisation. I think at that stage I ran out of gin. So I didn't get much beyond that.
Well done.
But we've discussed this a number of times in other meetings, and this is, I guess, the formalisation of the previous discussions we've had. All we're doing at this stage is agreeing to go out to consult on one of the options. What eventually happens after that consultation process is anyone's guess, but I mean, I'm ready to, I'm assuming everybody else has read the document, ready to recommend the resolution 1.8 to 1.8.1. The Council results consulting the Joint Water Services Council controlled organisation for Tararua with other councils as set up below. Wairarapa plus Tararua Joint Water Services, etc., etc.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. I'll note that you'd like to move there, but I'm going to give some questions.
Thank you, Your Worship. Before the option analysis that you've detailed there, Peter, there is reference on page 16, number 13 around rural connections.
Yes.
And you've explained in there that I mean, a single household, if they supply their own, it's not a problem. We know there are some private schemes across the district, but you have made reference to the one at Pongaroa where, there is some connection there with council responsibility. So you've said in 13.5 that they've set up a separate working group to think about that. Do we need to include an outcome from that working group when we put forward our water services delivery plan for that September deadline, or will it be, I guess I'm a little concerned that if we don't knit together what that working group might decide into our own water services delivery plan, are we going to impact on the communities that, because I'm sure that Pongaroa won't be the only one that we've got to think about.
And to your worship, the rural scheme, if you think about Danube, that's got rural connections as well. So it's not just limited to Pongaroa. Pongaroa is the clear purpose of livestock and Pongaroa Township. And then you could say the residences in between are also part and parcel to making sure that they have a consistent water supply. The issue there is that you need a water safety plan to deal with the rural supply part and a water safety plan for the town supply part, because you don't treat the rural scheme anymore. We used to put chlorine in it, and it was inconsistent. By the time it got through the town, there's virtually no chlorine, so it wasn't really doing its job. So that's a little bit more complicated. In saying that, we are the owner of the scheme. It's been in our books forever. The community at the time determined that they wanted to be rated. The other schemes that were funded by Rob Muldoon's government, of all those, that they chose to not to have it handed over to them fully. Pongaroa is different in that respect. So we've got 3 schemes that won't be directly caught by this one scheme that we think as a scheme, but it's really part of what we do.
So can I just reinforce though through you, your worship, that some decisions are still going to be made that will impact on our bigger picture across Tararua, and will we have a mechanism as we step towards that September guideline to be able to incorporate that into our overall plan?
It may not be necessary.
Oh.
That's what I'm thinking, is that the new water service bill that just came out overnight should deal with it.
Okay.
That's what I'm hoping, thinking, but I'm going to have to check.
Oh, thanks for clarifying. Thank you.
Councillor Gilman.
Thanks, Your Worship. On more questions, so I can go now. First of all, thanks so much, Peter, and to everyone else that's been involved.
Robin online.
Yeah, look, a huge amount of reading for us, but I certainly didn't underestimate the actual amount of work that went into producing the amount of reading that we've had. I was very grateful at points as I got to go, we've had this provided to us before.
The drip feed. Yep.
To be able to carry it. So thank you for the drip feed. It was a huge amount of information. I did just want to say thank you, because it's a huge amount of work, and thank you to Robin as well, who's joining us. I think it's really important to note that this is driven by central government. So, what we're doing is a requirement of us, of central government. And it's really clear with the way that current regulations and more regulations that are going to be coming into place means that going it alone with the status quo, so without the enhanced option, the status quo is just not an option, and going it alone in any form is going to be really tough. Before us and kind of the whole way along, we've really had 2 main options, and one of those has been the Anatu Ponganui option, and the other one has been the Wairapa plus Tararua option. From my perspective, I think there is a huge risk of going with Anatu when we decide. As a group, and I think that we have engaged with a very open mind, that side of things. But it is a group that is already in some ways fragmenting, as was clear in your report. So we actually, even if we chose to go with that model, we don't necessarily even know what that model will likely look like at the end. And for me, the biggest risk, going back to my first point, is that we could end up being left alone. So that could fragment completely, and then we could be left alone, which I wouldn't want to see at all. There's some really important, from my perspective, synergies of us going with the Wairarapa Tararua model. And we have similar sized councils, we have similar sized challenges. We have mostly 2 iwi that operate right through that area. From my perspective, absolutely the safest option for us and for our ratepayers would be going with the Wairarapa Tararua model. So I'm really glad that Councillor Johns is wanting to move to that effect. But I also really wanted to acknowledge that within this, and a huge piece of legislation was just dropped last night or yesterday. There is still some huge uncertainties when it comes to this reform. In the future of water in New Zealand, so in our district and in New Zealand, is going to be really painful no matter what councils decide. So if that's a key issue.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Is the one comment I would make is that I don't feel that Tararua would be left alone. The 3 councils have indicated that they are working and it will be welcome. I do understand the fragmented, because actually now I think close in that respect, different coastline and different people. There's a huge part.
Sorry, you wish just some clarification. So within the Manawatu Whanganui, that we wouldn't be applying. But it would not be the wider.
The councils, the sort of council north, haven't made their decision, but within the Whanganui group, paid a ring ticket, they are so wanting to work with others. I think it's just making those choices of who you want to go and consult with and where the relationship lies. And I think the close connection of the one Tararua has come through for us as well. But I didn't fear that we wouldn't be welcomed if we chose to work with others.
Can I just thanks, Your Worship. With that in mind, may I just ask a question? That's okay. So through you, Your Worship, my understanding, Peter, was that Manawatu District Council has been very clear and written to us that they don't want to proceed with a wider regional model. The Whanganui District Council has done the same, and also from the report that Palmerston North City Council has made it clear that the wider horizons model is not their preferred.
Yeah, that's right. And that, through Your Worship, yes, there are preferences that each council has stated. We must compare to status quo, so we must have that in there.
Yeah.
And as much as anything, we need to explain to our community why we may not choose that.
Yeah.
That's the challenge in the consultation. Is a lot of people will be saying, why change? Notwithstanding they don't like the increases that they've been seeing over the past few years.
I thank you for that. And I take on board what the Bishop has said. I still do have some doubts over that, but I think I'll make clear why my preferred option regardless of that synergies.
And the reason I wanted to comment on that was I think in Marsden District Council meeting that there was raised that further questions or comments around the work? Yep, Councillor Long.
Thanks, Peter, for that. You're talking about the AAA rating of the CCR and the difference in borrowing power or rate or interest rates, what will the difference be?
So, so we've had some work done in terms of what Tararua District Council might look like. If it didn't have access to LGFA funding and we had to use a standard and poor's rated system, and we might go from, say, 5% to 10% interest rate, a doubling in interest rate cost on our debt, as an example, because we would be rated in the C-ish range.
Thank you. So,
That's
we wouldn't be
that's the
borrowing,
issue.
right, thank you. So we wouldn't be borrowing off our
We just would borrow at a higher risk premium.
5%.
It's
5 to 10.
say it's 5.35 to 10.3. Can you remember, Robin?
I'm sorry, what was the question, Peter?
The difference in interest rates between Standard Poor's and LGFA.
Yeah, no.
Matt did some work on it. It was a good 5% on top of what we're currently having to pay.
I'm not sure it was that much. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it was a few hundred basis points. Yes.
Oh no, this was quite different. This is where if you didn't double your income source, then you were in a difficult position to be able to borrow at the right rating.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's deeply buried in this report.
We have had discussions in both our we have indicated a preference to one for Tararua. Obviously, there is close alignment there. We share a coastline and close working relationships with the one. So their preference was made very well by both they and I having checked that. Council side.
Thanks, Tracy. Yeah, there was a lot of paperwork here with required various meetings in the region, and of course been involved with Wairarapa discussions with the Wairarapa councils. There's 480 odd pages. Analysing the financial projections isn't easy. It's based on a lot of assumptions, and it's not on the surface. It's not easy to work out financially, which is really perfect. It's not hard to see whatever the costs are going to be at this point are going to be sort of substantial. How we handle those, or the new models handle that, this remains to be seen. But like looking at just, I've summed up the Horizons model, the Horizons area, and there are some. They seem to be struggling. I mean, the letter came from Whanganui today to say their preferences are Whanganui, Ruapai and Rangitikei. Ruapai who indicated interest with us earlier on. That's changed. That does come from Whanganui. I think if we go to consult, I think you're right, Peter, we need to consult on two models. And staying alone, what we've got could be one of those.
It must be.
Which must be right. So to me, I think, I mean, working through that, I definitely have a preference for the Wairarapa T model. Certainly the iwi indicated preference. They certainly have alignment. Tangi has alignment behind the two, but Whanganui and Wairarapa and Tangi got close relationships right to the east coast, Wairarapa. I think we have definitely synergies in size, geography, and styles of management with the three councils. Wairarapa. I think we do have to consult, but I think we've reached. I think probably the councils on this side have reached understanding, and I think we're pretty okay about what we're trying to do. I I think the sooner we do get on with it, make a stand and make a decision for better, that's what we're here for today, obviously. There's nothing in the report, what I've seen so far, has changed my mind. Probably at this point in time, I'm stronger in favour of why T model now. Councillor Wallace, who isn't here today, he can't really vote on it, but he has asked me to pass on to councillors that he's very strongly in favour of the Wairarapa T model as well. Just so that you know. And that's one position. I don't really need to do a lot of other discussion on. I think your report's fantastic, Peter. I know going out to consultation, there's obviously economic and there's a lot of relationships with the Horizons region. So the historical and current relationships are stronger than Wairarapa, you might say, but in places of water and services that we're talking about here, I think it's my preferred view to go with Wairarapa. Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland.
I concur with my fellow councillors. We align better with the Wairarapa. We connect through iwi and the east coast, the Tararua, Rohingya Maona, instead of over the hill. It would be also very hard to compete with our biggest city counterparts. I mean, they say that they'll work with us, but no, I don't have the confidence. And we could also share staff as we are closer and travelling time to Wairarapa as well.
Councillor
I
Maitland.
just endorse entirely what's been said. I've always favoured the Wairarapa YT model simply because I think more greater community of interest between us. We're in the same electorate. That's about one thing that we can say we're in that thing together. You know, there's not many we can do that with. So yeah, I'm very in favour of YT.
Councillor Chase, did you wish to make
no, I concur with my fellow councillors that very early on I thought that the YT was a benefit for us, and even talking with both Eves and Tamkinuiara, they have both said they support the YT concept more so than the wider horizon. So yeah, I fully support us having that.
Fine. Councillor Johns, you've moved the recommendation 1 through 1.8. Did you wish to that included 1.8.2? We would discontinue the exit from
Yes.
Recommendations 1 through 1.82 included by Councillor Johns. Questions or comments? Second for that. Councillor Titi Weber, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Peter, thank you very much. To Brian and to the one there has been really out to the assets planning. It was a huge long-term plan. I'm sure the number of emails you received, and I know the number of meetings that we've had and digesting this information certainly has been appreciated, getting it in parts because there was information here. I guess we were having to go out to consult with the community. It's going to be how do we make sure that everybody understands the benefits, the costs, and so forth. So there's a lot of reading that you will.
Yes, so thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Robin, for all your work with the team as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor. Close our meeting with our district whakatā. Let the winds of the Rohini and Tararua give you strength. Let the waters of the Manawatu nourish you. For we are the Painamu of Te Tāpiri the Metal Farm. Well done. Do you want to So I will send an email